the book of First Samuel, and this is a story about David again, and this is a scene where David is giving a second opportunity to deal with Saul, and is given a choice. So let's read and see what happens. Well, actually, let's set it up. So after King Saul stopped chasing David for a bit from being spared his life by David from the cave incident, well, Saul soon forgets about that and starts pursuing David again to kill David. You know, Saul's still on this mission to kill David. It was just a little lapse of I'm trying to think of the word. I don't want to say mercy, because Saul really didn't show any mercy for David, because he kept pursuing David. But he realized, I guess Saul realized after the cave incident that he could have easily died that day by David's hand and didn't. And I think because of that, Saul realized that God spared his life. But of course, Saul, still being very jealous of David, couldn't let it go. And soon his need for getting rid of the thing that causes him the most jealousy, or whatever you want to call it, dwelled back up into Saul's heart. And so Saul again started pursuing to once again kill David. So, and this takes place at the campsite where Saul's at, where they catch up with David and his men again. So let's read this. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping inside the circle of the camp with his spear stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the people were lying around him. Then Abishai said to David, "Today God has delivered your enemy into your hand. Now therefore, please let me strike him with the spear to the ground with one stroke, and I will not strike him the second time." But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be without guilt?" David also said, "As the Lord lives, surely the Lord will strike him, or his day will come that he dies, or will go down into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But now please take the spear that is at his head and the jug of water, and let us go." So David took the spear and the jug of water from beside Saul's head, and they went away, but no one saw or knew it, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a sound sleep from the Lord had fallen on them. Okay, so once again, David is presented with this great opportunity, or could we more properly say that it was a testing of his heart. I mean, because like outside said, one stroke and Saul would have been dead in the middle of the camp. But David still, despite everything that Saul is trying to do to him, realizes that God had picked Saul to be the people over Israel. And therefore, David refuses to hurt or kill Saul, because David knows in his heart and in his mind that by doing so, he would be betraying God. He would be stating that he knows better than God if he was to kill Saul. And David was not going to do that, because David loved God and lived for God. And because of that, he knew that killing Saul was not the answer, and it was not his place. I would venture to say that if David went ahead and did kill Saul, that that things would have gone badly. Not necessarily that David would have died, because God had already promised David that the one to bring about salvation was going to come from his line. So because of that promise, I think David would have came out okay, but his servant who went with him probably would have perished, and probably perished quite quickly. But because David had the wisdom and the knowledge that God is going to take care of Saul in his own time and in his own way, David was willing to be patient and wait on God to fulfill his promise to him that he would be king over Israel. So this is why David spares Saul's life. But at the same time, the taking of the spear in the water is to allow Saul to know that once again, God put Saul's life in David's hands, and David did the righteous and the merciful thing and spared Saul's life. And just think about it. Saul had an army. He had an army, and this army surrounded Saul in a complete circle. Saul was in the middle of this big circle, this big army. Not one soldier heard David and his servant approach Saul at all, nor did they hear them leave at all. Nobody had no clue when all this happened, until, of course, David reveals himself later. And if I remember right, I think I want to say that David hurled the spear down and the jug of water. I know he obviously showed it to them, saying, this is the spear at your head, this is the jug of water, or was at your head. But anyways, that was David's proof that he was there, to show Saul and all the people. But I love it, because David is like, as the Lord lives, surely the Lord will strike him, or his day will come that he dies, or he will go down into battle and perish. So David's content knowing that the Lord will judge Saul in his own way and in his own time. And as fact would have it, Saul does die in a battle. He actually takes his own life after witnessing all his sons being killed in that same battle. And his sword bearer refused to end his life at his request, so Saul ended his own life. And once that happened, David became king as God had promised him. So David shows us that just because we're giving an opportunity, it's not always a good thing to take the opportunity. Because are we taking the opportunity and going with it because it's a blessing from God? Or are we really doing it because of our own feelings of revenge, of greed, or whatever it is? We need to be able to discern, like David, is this the right thing to do? And David's discernment is still steadfast, because the first time David had the opportunity to kill Saul in the cave, David refused. But David did cut that piece of cloak off of Saul's robe. And David felt great remorse when he did it, because he actually laid his hand on Saul. The second opportunity, the temptation was even greater, because Saul was asleep. There was no risk involved. Saul was sound asleep, stab, sneak out, done. But David once again realized that Saul is God's chosen king, and therefore David could not and would not go against God's word and do what many would see that he would be vindicating and doing. He absolutely refused. And so we need to kind of take from David's example again and really try to discern what the opportunity is giving us. Is it giving us a chance to glorify God or glorify ourselves by whatever we choose to do? We always want to try to strive to think of what would God want us to do and do that. Take out the I want and put in what does God want to help us make our decision. Well, anyways, with that, I love you guys. You have a blessed day, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.